Ken, you have to introduce him.
Ken's gonna read?
I don't know, you introduce Ken.
Okay, I'll introduce Ken.
You're not gonna read Ken. You're the MC! Mike! No, someone else is
This is real life.
What?
Everyone, this is Ken Bauman. He is the star of The Secret Life of the American Teenager.
His new book.
Co-edits No Colony with Blake Butler. He runs Starter Press, which published Chris Higgs' book, Complete Marvin K. Mooney. Chris Higgs read at the last E-Reader. And he had his book, Solid, is forthcoming from Tyrant Press in 2012, right?
Damn, that was excellent.
Yes, I knew you would do better than me.
And so let's give a warm round of applause for Ken Bauman.
Okay, so this is a piece from that book, Solid, which is coming out next year from Tyrant Press, and it's a little bit later on in the book, and it's a bit somber, so you guys are gonna have to drink and be merry after it, just to to balance the mood. Okay, and it starts like this. A sick wind rises up. It is unhealthy. It isn't cared for. It is a wind that has been left without other less frightening winds. A wind that has no way of its own length and reach and height above all. A wind young that derives its power from forward movement, leaving behind all it can, including the knowing that it will, full well, come back in circular ways to where it began and was born, a wind without ease, unease, a diseased wind. It knows it can only circle before a gradual disappearing or dissipating or placating sadness, and so the wind does cry, not in song but in motion. The wind is crying when it runs through the cities that touch a certain height, cities with buildings large enough to call. And it cries when it knows there's an answer behind it. It moves. It always moves. The wind, though lonely and sick, can take itself around the world or around itself in equally as circuitous and impressed feet in less time than it takes for the men the wind winds around to realize they've been left behind by something that moves forward much faster and much better than them. The wind is not pride. The wind is sick. But there is not a cure for the wind. There isn't a cure. There is no diagnosis. The wind can only allocate itself to itself, can only cry because it knows the very motion it uses, forward, not back. Back would only be forward when trapped like the wind is trapped, so the wind can only move its sadness into a furtherance of itself. The wind is immortal. The wind is cherished, though, by the men and women it wraps around when the weather's right. By the calls above the building, they're known. By the ones who've borne it. By the parts of itself it does not know, but knows it does not know. They only know, like the wind, that movement. It is a forward-wrapping circle. The wind cries. The circle does not change, as its only is forward. And the wind, who is born sad and cries to move, does not think about its aheadedness. The wind sees the wind ahead of itself. The wind is an impression of the next wraparound. The wind, because it was born a very long space ago, knows its length only in regards to the changes in face that the men and women make with it. The wind also knows that, as it must be bound by a stream of itself, a space unlike the wind, because it is not a part of the wind. Inborn, it is a part of itself, and a part of itself, and a part of itself again. Until there are no parts but only the spaces between, the wind cannot move alongside itself like the men and women can, because the men and women are all the same, their faces. They move alongside one another and have that union or that left behind sadness that the wind cannot fantasize about or dream about, but can know is there. Feel in itself, but only in motion. Another, not another, as the wind cannot know another or two or one more piece, please. The wind cannot know another or two or one more, please. The wind must run by its own strength of forward motion. It can move. It will move. The wind is a will. It does not know this, as it must be still to know, but it does feel. The wind does feel this. This is the secret of the crying and the sadness and the circuitous sadness. The wind does a sensing. It senses without itself knowing, like numb parts of the men who run alongside each other, or the women who smile when wrapped around. The faces do not know each other, but the wind senses. But the wind also, while moving, feels in it that if it stopped, the sense of itself, the wind knowing that in its motion it is a motive and sensing thing, that it can stop. To stop and be still is not to be wind, but space-filled, air. Wind, though born, feels unknown to death, feels itself to be known only in moving, sometimes achieving the same place in two circles, sometimes wrapping around the same faces, they're all the same, sometimes in fear of its birth, or fear of its sadness, or fear of its ceaseless motive motion, or fear of its sensing, knowing, fear of its not being wind, fear. The wind is fear. The wind is fear in knowing. And the people who run alongside each other can only block their eyes, shiver. That's it. I also want to say, the next book I'm publishing through my press, Zeder Press, comes out in 2 weeks.
Oh shit.
And
who is it?
It's pretty incredible. I can't tell you. Like I'm trying to keep it mum until the very end, until I announce it. But it's pretty amazing and weird and unique. And I've worked on it with the author for like a year and a half.
Oh shit.
And I think I'm pretty fucking proud of it. It's a really beautiful book. So look on HTML Giant or wherever, it'll make its rounds. But yeah, that's that. And that was probably the most somber part of that book, and the rest of it is pretty fucking disgusting and really, really, I don't like reading this book. It still grosses me out. So I think that's a good sign. So I'm happy it's being published next year. And that's it. So thank you guys so much for having me.